all I could think was like, we should have done this. We should have planned, we should have prepared, but it's not really something that when it's going to happen. And so, thankfully, we have come out the other side of all of the questions and the uncertainty, and our business is in a really beautiful place.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
It's going great, Lindsay. How is your day starting today?
It's all right. It's literally storming outside, so I'm sorry if there's loud thunderclaps while we're in the middle of this recording. I'll try to not talk during them, but it's kind of hazard of living in the South, right? It's like you never really know what's going to happen.
It's funny. I've been on this traveling spree and finally made it home after 2 weeks on the road and found out that the weather forecast is cold and rainy. Cold with a bit of raining at the beach this weekend. I'm like, really? Come on. I've been dying to get back to this beach. So anyway, it's all good. I'm just happy to be home in my own bed, hanging out with my family for the weekend. So, well, I got to tell you, Lindsay, we have a treat today. We have one of my favorite people on the podcast. Her name is Abigail Whorton. She is the Chief Operating Officer at the Whorton Agency. And I had the pleasure of meeting Abigail. I think it might actually be 2 years ago. Is that right, Abigail?
Yeah, it's been like 2 or 3 along this journey. So I'd say two conservatively.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show. We're really, really excited that you are here and willing to join us in a conversation about a topic that is incredibly important for agency owners to hear. So I appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Abigail, we met, I think I actually was speaking at the network at the SNA meeting, if that's correct. So why don't you just talk a little bit about when we met and then what was going on in your agency at that time? And I'd love to share that story.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to share it. So we met at a really pivotal moment in both our agency's life and my personal life, where we had just lost my dad. And so he had started our agency 20 plus years prior to that, had worked in the insurance industry the entirety of his career, so 35 years in the industry. And we met at a meeting with our network that we're a partner of, and that is Southeastern Network Agencies. You were there presenting on perpetuation planning, which was ironic and quite timely, because beyond putting in his will that this business would go to my mother upon his passing, my dad didn't have a true perpetuation plan in place. There were a lot of conversations. I worked in the business for 2 years prior to him passing, so I had some familiarity, but we had yet to decide on what happened next and how did we transition, if we were going to, into my leading the business or my owning the business one day. And so you were there presenting, and all I could think was like, we should have done this. We should have planned, we should have prepared, but it's not really something that when it's going to happen. And so, thankfully, we have come out the other side of all of the questions and the uncertainty, and our business is in a really beautiful place. You played a large part in that, and so did our network, our group of people that my dad kind of had the foresight to join in business as a partner in order to protect us and help us have this sort of guiding force should something happen to him.
Hey guys, if you're looking to improve your bottom line, allow your team to operate efficiently, and really improve that customer retention, I believe you should check out Ascend. Ascend is the all-in-one insurance payment solution. They are focused on streamlining your invoicing, premium financing, accounting, and they'll even make your carrier payables for you. They are taking agency bill and making it as easy as direct bill. That is a game changer. They integrate with all of the major AMS players, and here's the best part. It's free. There is no subscription, no cost to you. They allow your customers to pay how they want. If you are interested in improving your efficiency, go visit ascend.com/insurance refocused and let them know that we sent you. I will tell you, no one thinks this is going to happen to them. And the reality is, I think last year in 2022, I had 10 agencies that had a situation that was similar to you all. And in 2023, I'm working through a couple agencies that are facing the same thing. And it's super sad. Like, I got to tell you, when I get those phone calls to say, what do I do? Oh, goodness. Like, what do we do? They're the worst. They're absolutely, I go and speak about, hey, do this in advance, give yourself 5 years, give yourself, like, find out what your baseline is, write things down, document the things that you know. And when someone hasn't done that, I think what people don't understand is there's nothing further from your mind of what the business impact is. It's all personal at the point when you lose someone that pivotal in your life. I mean, I lost my dad 10 years ago, and I could not imagine trying to figure out the how to keep his business going forward at that moment. In fact, there's chunks of time I actually don't remember much about, because I think your mind literally like blanks out because it's such
It's
a,
so
a
much.
huge part of your life, right? So walk us through. So you were in the agency,
Yes,
right?
I had actually been in the agency for 2 years to the day, which is bizarre when we looked back on it, because my dad and I had an understanding, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, Carrie, but we had the understanding that I would come work for him, and we would take exactly 2 years to decide if we wanted to continue, one, working together, and two, figure out if that worked for the business. So, did it work for our family? Did it work for the business? And did we even like it? And so, we never got to have that conversation. And in fact, the week prior to his passing, my mom and I were having a conversation about if, Lord forbid, dad passed tomorrow. His health was always top of mind for us, given some history. If he were gone tomorrow, we both looked at each other and we said, we'd sell this thing so fast. Like, we're not prepared to take it on and to do right by the business. We didn't feel. Ultimately, that proved not to be true. And we found it incredibly hard when people were saying to do exactly that, to even consider giving away this thing that he had sacrificed for and he'd built for our family. And so I'm grateful that we had had some conversations prior and kind of talked through scenarios. And I'm grateful that we did not go with what we originally thought would be our plan.
Well, and it sounds like, 2 years later, you're still here, and we were chatting a little bit before we started recording that you're doing really well. You have new employees and you're pushing the agency forward. But how did you cope without the absence of a written plan? Like, that had to be something that was really, really difficult in the moment.
It was. So the first week, mind you, we were in the midst of COVID, right? This was July of 2020. And so life looked very different. And so my dad and I had both been working at our respective homes. And then our staff, the way our office is built, everybody could come in through a separate entrance. They all had their own offices. We had one employee that chose to work from home most of the time. So we were able to navigate that pretty graciously. But then upon his passing, it was like, oh, wait, like my mom and I have to get out of the house. We have to like go talk to these people face to face. This is not a phone conversation. And so we came directly to our team. And maybe, honestly, Carrie, like you said, it's sort of, there are chunks of time that are a blur. I remember this conversation, and I think it was like 2 to 3 days afterwards that we sat with our team in our lobby at our office, and we just asked if they were willing to keep working with us, if they were willing to hold on. And if they were, we would honor that and we would figure it out. But they had to be willing, because if they were not willing, to sell, to service, to take care of clients, to help us figure out what we were doing on the back end of things, if they were not willing, it wouldn't have been possible. So I'm incredibly grateful to the people that are here. One of them is no longer here, but I'm still incredibly grateful to him for him sticking around and giving me the time that I needed to grieve, to process, to figure out how to get into this system or that, or how to pay this bill or that one. And then start to figure out if I could be a leader, and if I was one, was I a leader that these people were willing to follow? And so that took a lot of self-reflection. It took a lot of self-work. I've done a lot of work in sales and leadership purposefully, and invested in a lot of training for myself so that I could kind of rise to that occasion. And so really it came down for us to the people. And if they were willing to do it with us, like, we would do whatever it took to take care of them and to take care of this business. And so that for me became sort of our guide point of like, is this still going to serve everyone here? And as long as it does, this is a great situation. You know, the day it doesn't, that's a problem. But in that time, those same people we've added on to, Lindsay, like you said, we've added to our team. So our team is now double the size it was. Our book of business is now double the size it was. That includes an acquisition that we've made in the last year. And our revenue is up 40% from the time that Dad passed. We've increased it by 40% just in less than 3 years. So I'm incredibly proud of where we are. I'll take some credit, but not a lot, because it really comes down to the foundation that he built, and the willingness and the heart of everybody here to put in the hard work.
If you're like me and many other small businesses across the country where hiring, training, and retaining employees is a challenge, Agency VA has a solution for you. Agency VA has over 1,000 VAs hired, managed, and trained in the Philippines, Latin America, and India. But did you also know they have 100 licensed agents here in the U.S. that can help you manage your book? I use a VA who lives in the Philippines, and I absolutely love her. The process was simple. We had a consultation where they asked me my needs, goals, and concerns, and matched me with Allie, who has been an absolute game changer for me. Employing Allie through Agency VA has allowed me to focus on my business without worrying about HR concerns, turnover, and monitoring payroll. The best part is the Agency VA team was eager to help my company and also make sure that Allie is getting employee benefits, a competitive salary to help her live a better life in the Philippines. If this is something that you are struggling with inside your agency, please visit agencyva.com/insurance refocused and set up a time to talk to them about your hiring needs. So, we've talked a lot, obviously, and, but for the people that are listening, I think it's important for them to understand, like, was your mom actually in the agency with your dad, or what was her role? I mean, so your dad left the agency to your mom, correct?
100%.
Give us that dynamic as well. Like, tell me, was she there day to day? Like, what did that look like?
No, that's a great question. So people would assume that she was. That would be incorrect. She actually had just retired from a 31-year career in education. And so she retired in June. Dad passed in July. And so we were sort of left like, what does she do? My mom really identified herself in 3 ways: as a wife, as a mother, and as a teacher. And my sister and I, of course, I was 28 at the time. My sister was 24. We were grown, right? My sister is in education as well. So she was teaching. I was working here. We're living our own lives. So all of a sudden, my mom's entire identity sort of like fell out from under her. And so what she'll tell you is that first year for all of us really was quite a blur. And what she was able to do was just say, I trust you and I can support you. And she was willing to hold on to the business. So she played a very key role in not listening to outside forces, but really taking what I said to heart, really taking what our team said to heart, and being willing to hold on to it. Because quite frankly, like, if it failed, that was 100% on her financially, right? But if it succeeded, it was 100% on her financially as well, even though she's not the one that made it happen. So like understanding those dynamics and like getting comfortable with them, that was interesting to navigate. And as we've sort of like moved forward, what I've realized is I do want ownership of this business. I do want to perpetuate it and continue my dad's legacy. So we have now, through working with Carey, actually, we have come to an agreement and an understanding of how we can do that to honor my family, including my mom and sister, also honor this business and make sure it succeeds even beyond me at this point, right? And so that's been interesting to navigate, but I think loving one another and being very open and honest, and just expressing like what we needed and why, or what we wanted and why, has been key to figuring that out.
I think it's not as easy as what people think. When you think about it, it's a business and it transfers ownership, and it, that's a matter of, let's hash out the terms, let's write an agreement, and let's call it done. The problem is there are relationships, there's a legacy, there is years and years and years of supporting your dad to build this business, and the connection that you want to hold as tight onto as possible because that person's not there. So you hold on to all kinds of things.
Right. That may make not the first ounce of sense in the world. It may not make any sense at all that like that's what you would choose to like hold on to. But we've all had those things, right? Like we've all had those little things. Even the people here in our office that worked with my dad, right, that he hired, they are equally as attached to the Whorton name on the building as I am, if not more so. Like it's a running joke in the office, like who cares more about the name on the door, right? And it's incredible to have that kind of support and to have those people in your corner. And then the little things that, Carey, like you said, my mom walked alongside my dad they were married for 35 years as well. So the entirety of both of their careers really was spent together, and it was spent building this. There were times where my mom would put payroll on a credit card in the early days because that's what it took to make it work that month. So there were sacrifices that she made for our family for this business, trusting that my dad would grow it to be what it could be.
So here's the thing, Abigail, like you said it, you had people that are looking at this and saying, Abby's been there for 2 years. Like, come on, you need to sell this thing, and you need to just, it was completely unexpected and you guys chose not to. If you would have listened to those people, or, I guess the better way of asking this is, who did you turn to say, no, I want to do this, but I don't know anybody that can run a business that they've only been a part of in 2 years that has such a strong foundation. Like that's intimidating for anyone, never mind someone who's going through incredible grief. So tell me, who did you lean on and what role did they play in that process?
That's an incredible question because really the reason that we were able to stick tight and just stay still for a little while and figure it out was a friend of my dad's who happened to start our network that we're a part of, SNA. And his name is Kevin Painter. And so my dad met Kevin on a trip that they had both earned through a mutual company that they represented. So they were sitting in Costa Rica. My dad, having been a part of a network prior, unfortunately, they breached their contract and he was able to, extract himself from that. And so he was very wary of any other network opportunity. And found SNA to be a really unique situation, from profitability to the people, to the true, nature of what are we all here for, and that's to help each other be better and to grow. And so Kevin and Dad sitting in Costa Rica, talking it through, Kevin selling Dad real hard on it, and he was successful. But Kevin's actually the first person that I called. So I got my dad's things from the hospital, and the last person that he had texted was Kevin. And Kevin was just wishing him luck. Dad was going into, have some work done, have some blood work taken or something like that. And so he was like signing off with Kevin, letting him know he'd be unavailable for a minute. And God bless him, he still feels horrible about this when we tell this story, like in public. Like I called Kevin from Dad's phone, like sitting on a bench in front of the hospital because I just couldn't stay inside any longer. And he literally answered the phone and he said, "Is this a ghost of Bill Whorton calling me?" Making a total joke about it, right? And I said, "Kevin, actually, this is Abigail Whorton." And we'd met before, we'd spoken. And I said, "Dad has passed away and I don't know what I need to do to like let people know to do." Like I was like, I don't know what to do. I literally just pressed call because he was the last person Dad had spoken to. And I was like, somebody needs to know, right? Like you have to respond to people that he was speaking with. Like you have to, it's the craziest thing. I swear by the next day, like all of our carriers knew. We told our staff, but like people in the industry were reaching out to us, people that had worked with Dad previously. And it was all because Kevin was able to kind of take the reins on that and help disseminate the story so we didn't have to. And then on top of that, he was able to talk with me and Mom, in the first couple of weeks and just said, after we told him a lot of people were coming at us with a lot of thoughts and we weren't sure what to do. He said to us, just don't do anything for a year. Don't make a big decision. Don't sell anything. Don't buy anything. Don't even change like your like paper provider, right? He was like, don't change anything. Just let your business run. And a year from now, make a big decision. And so what that allowed us the freedom to do was like somebody who'd been in this industry, somebody my dad respected, somebody that many people know and respect. And now I've come to know both as a friend and a colleague and respect him heavily. He was just saying like, don't do anything. And that gave us permission to just say, okay, well, we aren't at peace with selling. We're not going to sell. We're not at peace with letting our people go and find something else to do. We're not gonna, they're here with us. We have the permission to just be for a little while. That's what we're going to do. So he was very key in that, just setting us up for what I think was a successful transition period, just with that one piece of advice. And then of course, along the way, he answers every phone call that I send his way. He's just been incredible to work with. And then our entire network, getting to hear about my dad from his peers has been so amazing. And they've all been so welcoming and so willing to watch us succeed, right? Like none of them questioned if I could do this, which I mean, they might have in the background. I don't know, but to my face, none of them questioned if we could do this. And that in and of itself to me was, again, permission to figure it out. It was like, I have people in my corner that think it's possible that we can make this work. Like they know our business. And so why don't we try? Why don't we try? So there have been some really incredible people along the way. And I think that started with the decision that my dad made to join this particular network of people. And now I actually serve as the new membership chair for our group as a co-chair of that position, along with my friend Megan down in Columbus, with Proverb Insurance. And together, she and I are very specific about like, if our core values do not align, like if we do not as human beings connect with prospective new partners, it's not happening. Like that, it's too important. What has been built within this group, it's far too important. You can have great numbers, but if you're not going to align with like the values that we have and the way that we're all doing business, which we believe is, very correct. It's very, very much in favor of protecting the client, taking care of the client, being profitable, being smart about what we're doing. So if you're not aligning with all of that, it's not typically going to work out. And so I'm grateful to be surrounded by people like that consistently.
This story is very inspiring, and I'm sure it would be very inspiring to other people who are going through similar unfortunate things that you went through. I think it's hard to speculate on what the hardest part of it probably was, but in my mind, one of the hardest things could be dealing with the staff, especially when you've only been there for 2 years and some of these staff members have been there for years and years and have had experience working with your dad. How did you get them to follow you and trust you? And how did that process go? Was there pushback? I'd love to hear a little bit about that. That would be very intimidating for me in my current state right now,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you're in your 20s, aren't you, Lindsay? Is that right?
I'm 24, mm-hmm. Just turned 24.
Yeah. So I was 28 at the time. So there was only one person in the office younger than me. And that is not true now. Now I'm middle-aged in the office at 31, which is amazing. But there was one person in particular, that had worked with my dad for a very long time. Someone who, moved me into my college dorm, who moved me into my first apartment, my first house. We went to church together. He really helped Dad to grow the business. And when I came in originally, it was hard for him to make the transition to me even being a colleague, right? For me to step in and say like, hey, we can work alongside each other, when he'd known me as a child and then as this, young adult growing up. And so that was difficult. I felt like we started to overcome a lot of that, and then dad passed. And I think very quickly, I think the easiest thing for him would have been for us to just say like, we're damsels in distress, like help us, please. And that's just not how I was raised. I was raised by two incredibly hardworking parents. They had literally my mom's store credit card debt to their name when they got married. That is the sum total of what my parents had. And so everything that they built together through tenacity and hard work and through faith and trusting that, they were taking the right steps, doing the right things to build a legacy that they could leave to their kids one day. And so having that as my background and as sort of like the core of who I am, I'm going to work hard and figure it out. And I have enough humility to know I don't know everything, right? My mom's favorite saying as an educator, she taught primarily, younger children like pre-K through second grade for her career. And her best little phrase that I took from her career was, the day that a 5-year-old asks me a question and I know every answer that year from every 5-year-old and every question, like life's gotten boring, like she wanted to not know the answer. She wanted to be surprised. And so I feel like I've always had that ability to ask questions and like preparedness to be surprised and like this desire, in fact, to like not know. So I think that lent itself really well to like my willingness to learn and to fail, and to fail, in my opinion, you have to fail forward, right? Like failure is totally fine. But if you're not learning from it, you're not growing and changing from it, that's problematic. Actually, when I was talking to Mindy, who is one of our CSRs, we call them client relationship specialists within our office, but the typical role would be a CSR. And, just every time we do quarterly reviews, I always solicit feedback. So whether that's positive or negative, I want to know how I'm doing while I'm telling them how they're doing, because how can I continue to lead them if I have one idea of how it needs to go and they have another? And so something that she said to me that was just incredibly complimentary, and I took very much to heart, was that I'm always willing to seek that feedback. I'm always willing to try. And like, if it's not great feedback, I'm willing to adjust to accommodate what it is that they need and what they're looking for. And so with that, unfortunately, right at the beginning, again, this particular employee who'd been around for a while, it just wasn't going to work. We tried and we tried and we tried. I cried a lot over it. I lost a lot of sleep over it because I wasn't sure we could be successful without him, quite frankly, given how integral he was to the business. But I also knew that we were not going to be successful if he stayed. And ultimately, he made the choice to leave. But it was a choice where it really came down to like he was going to have to leave or I was going to have to let him go. That was sort of the point that we had reached. And it was devastating, to have such close ties with him and his family. And then, it was hard for my mom. It was hard for me. It was hard for the team. And ironically enough, I mentioned we acquired an agency last year. He left and we literally, that agency that we were in the process of acquiring, I had yet to share that with the team. The timeline, the overlap, it was like 2 months of like, hey, I'm going to buy a business. We're working that out legally over here. We're working out financially over here. He quits. And hey, this other business is going to start January 1. It's ours. So we had about 2 weeks of sort of chaos, of uncertainty. And I would say that was right at a year ago. And even a year ago, I wasn't sure that I knew what the heck I was doing. You know what I mean? But I was willing to try, and that was always important. And so I think that being how I come to the table really helps with the team saying like, I'm willing to trust you because that's what we're all doing here. Like we're all trying, and along the way, like I gained the knowledge that I needed about the business itself, about the products that we sell, about the clients that we serve. Like I said, I've invested in specific sales and leadership training because I'm going to lead from the front. I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do. We still clean our office collectively. We don't have a cleaning service. So on Fridays we clean. We all have a job. So I take trash out, I clean toilets, like I sweep. I water the flowers out front when we get fresh flowers put in so that they don't die. Like I'm willing to do all the things, and I'm willing to do those things because my dad was. He was still doing all of those things 35 years into his career. And that was the example that he set for the team. So the fact that I was willing to come in and do those same things, I think they saw enough alignment with how he was and how I was that helped. So I think his foundation really allowed me just to begin with like a certain baseline of trust from them to keep moving forward.
So, Abby, I got to tell you, I mean, you started with people, you started with relationships. Like that was your first thing, is to make sure that the people on your staff were willing to go the distance with you. And then it's all about the relationships that your dad had that you could lean on and trust. And I mean, I've seen that firsthand. Kevin Painter is one of the best people I know. But the reality is this industry is full of people that are willing to help each other. I've never seen it before. Like it's the thing that I love the most about this industry. Tell me a place where competitors help each other succeed to the same level as we have in this industry. And I've never experienced it. I'm not kidding you. So,
I haven't either.
it's
Yeah.
it's super incredible to know that that's what allowed you to move forward and gave you the time and space to figure out if it even is what you wanted to. I mean, the reality is when you're 2 years into a job, you don't know if that's your lifelong career.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not how this works. And to be thrust into having to decide with what most might think the cards stacked against you, it was incredible that people made the difference. And I think that's a huge message here. Like if you don't have relationships in this industry, you're not trying to have relationships because they're out there. There are people that are willing to do this. Beyond, beyond that, what advice after going through something like this? Because again, we all never think this is going to happen to us. What advice would you give to people your age, people that are your dad's age, like whatever? What advice would you give them to not have them have to walk this road the same way you've had to?
I've thought about this a lot. Actually, I've given a lot of advice. I don't remember a lot that comes out. I sort of like blank out. Like I'm not going to remember this conversation because I was so nervous going into it. But I will say, like within SNA specifically, right? We have got some folks that are on kind of the tail end of their career, and we have some folks like Kevin, like my friends the Lambs, like my friend Kim Farner. They all have kids that are now working in their business, which is an incredible thing, right? And so I love that they're doing that. But until this happened with my dad, I don't know that any of them had really thought that forward. Like, oh, well, something could happen and we need to be like prepared for the kid, right? So I would encourage anybody my age to continue just learning as much as you can, like plugging in at all possible levels of this industry. And just creating a knowledge base of the product itself, of the industry itself. Because that for me was like the steepest learning curve, right? Like inherently, I felt like leadership was more natural for me versus the learning of the intricacies of this business. But that's like the bread and butter. You can't not know those things. So that was probably my steepest learning curve. So I would say get into it, figure it out, start getting active, ask questions, be curious. And a big part of that for me actually too was the Independent Insurance Agents of Georgia organization, IIAG. So that was again something Kevin steered me towards was the young agents part of that group. So John Barber is our CEO, and he immediately got connected to me through Kevin, brought me in, helped me start to meet everybody. I now serve on the Young Agents Board, and that for me it's been a great place of learning and a great place to connect as a young person in this industry, specifically through young agents. Because for me, I'm doing a job that most people that are doing this job are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Like they've been doing it for a long time. So I needed, a collective group that perhaps, was more so my age, and young agents brought me that through the big I. And so I would say get plugged in, get as knowledgeable as you possibly can be. And also be patient with your parents, like, or be patient with the older folks that are still steering the ship. Like, there's a lot of respect owed to the people that have maintained a business like this over the years. It's a great industry to be in. It's a great business to be a part of. Quite frankly, I have found it to be unmatched. I worked in corporate, I worked in nonprofit. I did a lot of different things. I was trying a lot of things in my life from 18 to 28, right? Like, trying to figure it out. And there is nothing that matches this from a residual standpoint, profitability, the people, all of that. And there's a lot of respect owed to the folks that came before us that allowed us this opportunity, that created that foundation like my dad did. And then for folks that are, more like my dad, right, on the other side, be okay with letting it go, like, it really is like, if the point was to build something worth living beyond you, right, then why don't you let it go on beyond you? Like, be done, or be ready to leave, like, be ready to create a plan. And like, think about the hard things. My mom and I don't want to have these conversations, as we were talking about ownership shifts now. But we're having to have conversations about, like, what happens if my mom and I both pass away, and my sister, my incredibly fragile, kind-hearted, still, like, reeling from dad's death sister, has to suddenly deal with that, right? And that's not just our business and the people in it. That's my financial life, my home, my mom's financial life, my mom's home, 3 dogs. Like, it's a lot. And my mom and I did not want to have those conversations. But what, like, a disservice we are doing to my sister if we don't have those conversations, right? Like, what disservice are we doing to our business if we don't say, hey, so and so in my office has first right of refusal because he's expressed interest in owning this business if we don't want it, and he will take care of it. He'll keep the name on the door. He'll keep, the what Bill did kind of legacy in place. That's how we do a lot of things in the office. Well, it's just what Bill did. And it works. But, we didn't have any of that in place, and all of that matters. And it matters more than your unwillingness to have a conversation or your fear of having that conversation. So I would say on either end of things, like, be really open, be really open, be willing to acknowledge that we're all here for a very limited amount of time and we don't know what that looks like.
You said something really key, and I want to highlight it because it's super important. I think some people might have a plan. It could be in their head, it could be on paper, it could be whatever, but they're afraid to share it with others because they're not sure how it'll be received. You said something really important, which was, you know what? We do have a plan. So and so has first right of refusal. That communication and that openness can actually keep your talent with you. The reality is, the average agency owner is um, like 54, 56 years old. 20% of independent insurance agencies, 10,000 independent insurance agency owners are going to transition ownership in the next 2 to 5 years. 10,000. Their staff is wondering, what does that do to me? If you don't tell them and you don't communicate what your plan is, they could potentially think, you're going to sell or you're going to do something, and I'm not sure who my next boss is going to be. And there's an uncertainty there. So if you have a plan, number one, get a plan. Write down whatever form of the plan you've got. Number two, tell your incredibly important people that you have a plan and that they are going to be taken care of. The number one thing that every agency owner that comes to me and I say, what is most important to you? Their people is at the top of the list every single time. I've yet to meet an owner that says, what's most important? Money. I've never met it. Like, we talk a lot about multiples. We talk a lot about the value of an agency. When you come right down to it, relationships and people are what are most important. So I would strongly suggest, if you've got a plan, let your people know that they are part of your plan and you have something in mind for them, right? And, last but not least, find people to surround yourself with that can support the people who will be left in your absence to help navigate something that is not as easy as it looks. It's difficult and it's messy and it's, you could never write a plan that thinks of every scenario, but at least if you give a guiding force and surround yourself with a Kevin Panther or whoever it is, it eases that burden for the people who are navigating this road,
It
because it's a
does.
difficult road. No two ways
It
around
really
it,
does.
right?
I
Yeah.
mean, think about it. Like, we're in this business, we sell life insurance. Theoretically, most folks are doing that, right? All day, every day. And coming up with a perpetuation plan for your business is akin to having life insurance for your family. Because of my dad's preparation, we joke about it because we say you can laugh or you can cry. But my dad would have appreciated that he sort of won the life insurance lottery, like of all the things over time. His what he did for us and what he set up to protect us went into effect. And so he couldn't be here, but his forethought meant that we were okay. My mom has chosen to build a new home, rather than staying in the home she and my dad were in. But she had that choice. There was money there to do that, and she didn't have to make that decision immediately, right? It was one that she was able to make on her own timeline. She was able to make decisions that met her emotional needs and the place that she is in life now versus decisions based on a lack of finances, right? Because my dad had that money in place. This perpetuation plan is going to be life-giving to our business because it puts those protection points in place for everybody. After we got through a couple of years, Carey, you mentioned, mom not working in the business. Like, how does that sort itself out? At first, everybody was totally fine with it, right? Like, she's super supportive. Everybody loves her. She knows everybody's families. She drops in occasionally. And she's able to offer insight that dad had. But they all understand that she's not running the business. She's not making the decisions. And so there came a point where there just were questions that came up of like, what's Linda going to do about this? What's she going to do about that? Like, how does that impact us as staff? And how does that impact our future and our families? Do you get to make that decision, or does she? Like, how is this all going to work? So even creating that plan and like having thoughts in place, that we've now verbalized, like you just said, that has created ease for my employees. I can tell you, there will be fluctuation in our business. People will come, people will go. But honestly, the people that are here right now, I see retiring here. 3 of them particularly have expressed they will be done here. This is their end game, whether it's 15 years from now for some of them, or 30 years, or 2 years. Like, this is their end game. And our newest employees, I feel really confident that if I can continue to provide for them what the rest of our team is getting out of this, that they will stick around too. And so them having the confidence to say like, hey, I'm in it, that is a gift back to us. So we've given them stability and a promise for the future, and they've given us commitment. And that means we can fulfill that promise, right? Like, we can be here. Yeah.
So critical, isn't it? It's just so critical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Abigail, and sharing your story with us. I know that we find it inspiring, and it's going to be inspiring and helpful for lots of other people who are going to unfortunately go through the same situation. I mean, there's no stopping it other than making a plan. So we appreciate you coming on and sharing what your journey was like with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being able to share more about it. And I do hope it makes an impact for people. This was not our plan, not at all. My mom talks all day, every day about how she is making the best of her life, but this is not what she would have chosen. And it's not, I would take my dad back in a heartbeat over any of this, So
Sure.
You have to talk about it. You have to think about it.
So Abby, if anybody wants to reach out to you and talk through this, maybe they're going through the same situation, how would they reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can send me an email, Abigail, Abigail, at the Whorton, Whorton, agency.com. You got to spell Whorton for everybody. They're like, oh, Whorton, here's a who? I'm like, no, you got to tack a W on. Yes. But I would be more than happy if anybody had questions or, was seeking guidance. I would be happy to be able to get that back to somebody.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.